Yo guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing our second Paramount War Summit War Saga of One Piece review. I'm not going to beat around the bush too much here in the opening, but yeah, we're going to be getting into it. This is the last little review we do until we get into the new world and the second half of One Piece, which you guys should probably be seeing that next review in the near future as well. Yeah, stay tuned for that, and if you guys do go on to enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, because I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, let's get right into the review. So the first arc we are going to be covering today is Impel Down. Luffy sets off from Amazon Lily with Boa Hancock so that he can infiltrate the maximum security prison in order to save Ace. Now, personally, I think Impel Down is probably, I might get, some slack for this, but might be the best arc in this saga. Now, I know a lot of people are like Marineford this, Marineford that, and that, the title of this video is that the One Piece community is gonna like witch hunt me. I have some opinions about Marineford and the Summit War as a whole. Not saying that any of it's bad by any means, but I think that Impel Down is really what makes this saga worthwhile. There are a lot of great moments in Marineford, and I'll get to that when the time comes, but I just want to let it be known now that Impel Down, I think, is where it's at and what makes this saga great. So with Impel Down, one thing that I do really like about Marineford and this saga as a whole is that because this is, a massive pirate war, it brings everybody together. So we do get to see the return of a lot of familiar faces. Throughout this whole saga, we get to see the return of like Shanks and Whitebeard, who we've seen briefly, Blackbeard, Mihawk, all of these characters who we've seen from the beginning of the series. Like Mihawk, we saw all the way back in Baratier and back in the East Blue, and we haven't really seen him much since. Maybe little clips of him here and there, but now all of the warlords are brought together. That I believe that happens in this arc because Boa Hancock got the summons and all that. But anyway, in Impel Down, of course, we get to see a lot of the former pirates who Luffy fought that are now thrown in prison. Most, I guess more specifically, we get to see a lot of the Baroque Works members. We get the return of Bon Clay, Mr. 3, Mr. 1, who's like the blade arm guy, and Crocodile, of course. So that is really cool, getting to see those familiar faces be brought back again, especially Bon Clay, who plays a pretty important role towards the end of this arc, because he's a real one for real. Yeah, that's one thing I do like about the saga as a whole, but it sort of starts here in Impel Down. Yeah, Bon Clay is really what makes this arc too. He carries, like, for real. Everything from Luffy being put out of commission by Magellan, which I'll get to in a second, and him carrying him all the way to Iva, as well as the sacrifice made at the very end of the arc. Yeah, Bon Clay's a G. I think what makes Impel Down a good arc, like compared to Marineford, is that Luffy has just learned about Ace being executed and all that. So a lot of what we see in this arc is like his initial feelings, right? So it's just sort of that initial desperation to get his brother back, which I really enjoyed. Just him running through literal hell, which, another thing is that that I did like is that the Impel Down is modeled after the layers of hell from Dante's Inferno, which is a classic piece of literature, which there's a lot of stuff based off of. A lot of depictions of hell itself are based on Dante's Inferno. And I think that, Impel Down is also modeled after that, with the different layers and everything that they represent, which I thought was interesting. So it's like Luffy is literally trying to go into hell and back to get his brother back, which, for those people who do know or get the reference, it's pretty symbolic. Like, it's literally him going to hell and back. But yeah, just that initial jolt of like desperation is what I think makes it, if that makes sense. A lot of other cool characters are introduced in this arc. Of course, we get the awesome fight between Luffy and Magellan, who uses the poison. Yeah, and then Luffy gets defeated and is very close to being dead, until Bon Clay stumbles across Iva and the revolutionaries, who have had like this secret room in the prison. Iva is that big drag queen dude lady, who is able to manipulate hormones. That's like the, I almost said quirk, but the devil fruit ability. So he's able to heal Luffy by increasing like his adrenaline and like his healing hormones, which that was really cool. And seeing yet another connection to Luffy's father, Dragon, through Iva is really interesting too, because Dragon is arguably the most mysterious character in all of One Piece. Like, he shows up like here and there, and he's just a dude. Like, everybody's scared of him. He's known as like the worst criminal of all time. Who is he really? And like, what is his real goal? And how important? I feel like, towards the end of One Piece, he's going to play a major role, obviously. Because why would Oda introduce this character and have so much mystery around him for him to not even be important? But yeah, being able to see any connection to Dragon in the story so far, or any appearance of Dragon, is really awesome. And so Iva is a prime example of that. Another character we do get to see is, of course, Jinbei, the Fishman's warlord. Yeah, he doesn't really need to be in this arc, if I'm honest. I feel like he was really just put in there to help be like a supporting cast, but also like to help Luffy out and like make some sort of connection with Ace and Whitebeard, just to sort of fill in Luffy on what he knows. And in turn sort of informing the reader as well. But he's also there to sort of as like a pivot point, I guess. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but once we get out of this whole war saga, then that gives Luffy a connection to Fishman Island and the events that do happen during that saga. So that just gives Luffy a bit of an anchor. Pun not really intended, but it works. I don't know. Again, what I say makes more sense in my head, if I'm honest, so I apologize. Of course, some of the biggest moments of this arc is when Bon Clay is rescuing Luffy, and he's nearly dead, and the wolves are about to attack them all, and then Luffy has a burst of haki, which he doesn't really know what haki is, but we've seen at various points leading up to this war arc that, he does in fact have Conqueror's haki, the supreme color of the Supreme King, but he just doesn't know what it is. All of these other people understand it, and they're like baffled by it, but it's not until afterwards, when he's being trained by Rayleigh, that he comes to understand what haki is and gets proper training. But yeah, being able to see these little outbursts of what I know to be Conqueror's haki, since I was spoiled on quite a bit, just with One Piece in general. It was just fun, it was exciting to see Luffy gaining new powers. That's one, something great about shonen manga, is that you get a lot of power-ups and new abilities. And so with haki becoming more prevalent at this point, going into the new world and all of that. Yeah, it was just really fun to watch. A couple of other really interesting reveals that we do get is that we did know that both Buggy and Shanks did serve on Gold Roger's ship, the Oro Jackson, I believe, before he was killed, executed. But what we did not know, and what gets revealed in this arc, is that Buggy is actually Shanks's brother. So that right there was like, it doesn't really matter much. At least I don't think it does, not yet. I know that in current One Piece, a lot is being explored about, Shanks's past and who his father is and all that stuff. So that might make Buggy also more of an important character. But at the moment, it doesn't really matter too much to know that connection. It's just cool to know. But what is pretty important, at least to me, and what was even cooler, is to learn the big reveal that Ace is the son of, get this, Gold Roger. So yeah, I kind of already knew that Ace wasn't Luffy's blood brother, but more of just like a best friend, but they're so close that they're brothers. That was something I was kind of already aware of. But I think I had heard somewhere that Gold Roger was Ace's dad, and I didn't really believe it. But now it's like, when that was announced by Sengoku on like the platform, I was kind of blown away because I couldn't believe that was actually true. And at first I thought Sengoku saying that was a lie. But then we get like the backstory stuff about Ace's mom, which was really cool, about how she was pregnant and kept Ace inside of her womb for like a year or more, which ended up killing her. But she did that to protect him from the government. That was awesome to hear. And also exploring the bond between Garp and what's his name? Roger. That was interesting. Like, that whole backstory part there, I enjoyed that quite a bit. And that's sort of the whole reason why Ace was targeted in the first place, is because they come to find out, the government, that Ace was a descendant of Roger. So he had to be eliminated and made an example of to all these pirates. So overall, being able to see these returning faces and just seeing Luffy's desperation as he fights his way into the most impenetrable fortress that there is in the One Piece world, fighting his way through, and then fighting his way back out again after he realizes that him being there was basically all for nothing. Just that desperation, man. That is what makes it. And everybody just tagging along to break out, and it was like a jailbreak kind of deal, which I thought was super fun, super entertaining. At the same time, we did get a lot of reveals.
A few moments later.
Overall, like I said, it was just really fun and made even more interesting and engaging by such high stakes, with, Whitebeard closing in on the government, Ace's execution, and just the environment that Luffy was in, just the idea that he broke in and now, which is already difficult enough, but going to the deepest level and then getting all the way back out again is just unheard of. So Luffy having, just such unprecedented odds against him, it was just an awesome ride. Everybody tagging along. It was a great arc. Overall, I think I'm a bit hesitant to give it a higher score than Marineford, because, what I'm going to say about Marineford, which isn't anything overtly negative, I still think people will give me some slack for. But putting this above it, that might, be a little too much for some people. Not that I really care, because this is my opinion and my review, but But yeah. Anyways, I'm sort of beating around the bush here. I'm going to give it an 8.5, and then I'll start to talk about Marineford and then tell you guys all about my thoughts on that. Alright, so Marineford. What is it about it that makes me so hesitant? Well, firstly, everybody makes Marineford out to be just peak shonen, the greatest arc in One Piece, which arguably it might be. Yeah. I don't think that it was all that. Marineford was very fun. I'm going to start by talking about the things that I did really enjoy about Marineford. First of all, it had some amazing moments. It was action-packed with Luffy making his way towards Marineford into Ace's execution, Whitebeard and his entire fleet closing in on the government. We had all of the admirals, all of the warlords in one spot, all just going ham with Akainu and Aokiji. Aokiji freezes his entire fleet, Akainu with that magma, trying to turn Whitebeard's entire crew against him and the entire fleet. So many moving pieces. The Straw Hats are nowhere to be seen, which is something that I do really enjoy about this saga, is that it's focused on Luffy. This isn't about his crew. It's solely focused on Luffy, and by the end of it, we see the effects that everything that happens in this arc has on Luffy, and then he realizes that he needs his crew. And it's all put together very well. It's well written. Just Luffy's separation from his crew. Yeah, I really enjoy that. That makes it something special for sure. But the problem I have with it, and maybe this is just a me problem or just a problem with the manga versus something like the anime, but I think that everything just went by way too fast. Marineford is supposed to be such an emotional arc, where the death of Ace, the death of Whitebeard, everything, Luffy's despair at all of this, Whitebeard's speech, everything, right? The emotions behind Garp and Ace, watching everybody come at them, Garp being helpless, he can't do anything to save his grandsons. You know, he has some of the most power there on the field, but his grandsons are pirates, and if he were to step in to try and save them, then he would be a traitor and he'd be killed just like the rest of them. He can't do anything. That's why he says to Sengoku that, you know, Sengoku is forced to hold down Garp, because if he lets go of Garp, Garp is gonna go ham, right? So just all of the emotion, right? I understand it's very impactful, in a well-written arc, but maybe me as a reader, I read things pretty fast and I just swam right through it. So the emotional moments didn't hit like I think they should have for me. Another thing is that I was spoiled for a lot of it. Stuff about Ace being a donut, right? Like, that might be a thing with the community, or just like the anime-manga community in general. Everybody's constantly talking about Marineford and everything that happens, that it's so hard to get into One Piece and not be spoiled for everything these days. So that is also another factor that made the big reveals and the big moments like Ace's death so lackluster, I suppose. Don't get me wrong, when certain moments like that did play out and did happen, it was still a spectacle, you know, seeing it actually play out and being like an introspective, I guess, being able to say, you know, as a reader, I've finally made it to this part that everybody speaks so highly of, like, I'm a part of this now. But without there being that surprise factor, that's just a part of the experience that was taken from me, I guess. So I guess what I'm trying to say about all of this is that Marineford was awesome. It had some great moments, some little battles. There's parts where Crocodile was boxing with Whitebeard, Akainu and Aokiji going crazy. I'm pretty sure Rayleigh showed up at one point. Shanks shows up at the end, which was a dope moment. Marco the Phoenix, he's awesome. Garp is there, Sengoku's there, everybody is there. Mihawk is going stupid. Like, the arc is awesome. Awesome fights, awesome moments. It just did not hit for me. It was great to watch. Just the emotional beats did not sit with me. Which also leads me into another point, is that I think that Whitebeard and Ace are severely overrated as characters. Being able to see the kind of respect that Whitebeard demands is awesome. Like, he's a cool dude, but I think the thing about Ace and Whitebeard's characters is that they start to become great characters after the fact. When we start to see it, like, sure, we have their initial introductions where we see Shanks'S meeting with Whitebeard. We see how overwhelming their hockey is, and they split the sky. We see Whitebeard at Marineford, and how everybody loves him. But that's sort of all we get before he dies. But it's until later that we see how feared he was and how powerful he was, with being able to claim Fishman Island as his territory, and everybody just steers clear of there, because they're like, oh, if we frick with this place, we're fricking with the big man Whitebeard himself. Like, that kind of thing. He becomes more powerful and important through information gained later on than when he was alive. And I think that we'll start to see even more of that when we get into Wano. And I know we get a lot of backstory stuff where we get to see Whitebeard in his prime too. He'll start to become far more important later on. And I know Ace also has appearances later on when he's talked about how he's also in Wano, how he had went after Kaido and stuff like that. Not important as of now when he's alive, but becomes more important after death. So that's kind of where I sit with Marineford as a whole. I didn't talk about specifics much because there's just so much that happens. But that's just my overall thoughts about Marineford. I really did enjoy it. It was fun, it was chaotic, but it just went by way too fast. And because I was reading it so fast, and because I was spoiled on so much, all of the big emotional moments did not sit with me. So it made it less spectacular in the end. That being said, I'm still going to give this arc a solid 9, maybe 9.5 out of 10. But I do personally think that Enies Lobby is a better arc. That is one that I feel like not as many people talk about. It's not as overhyped as Marineford is. And I knew I knew less about Enies Lobby than I did Marineford. So when crazy stuff happened with like Robin's moment and Usopp shooting down the flag, all of that kind of stuff that happened in Enies Lobby hit with me so much, which is why that arc is my favorite arc, and I think is the best arc. I like it more than Marineford, and that's all I'm gonna say. But Marineford still does hit, and it's a top tier shonen arc for sure. And the final arc I am going to be talking about is, of course, the post-war arc. So yeah, Luffy gets transported off the battlefield after being punched through the chest by Akainu, and he gets rescued by a Trafalgar Law, and ends up on the Sabati, or not Sabati, what is it called? Near Amazon Lily, some arc, or not arc, what am I saying right now? Island. Where he's recovering and he's going to begin his training with Rayleigh. During this time, Luffy wakes up and, he he thinks that everything that just happened was a really bad dream, a nightmare, before coming to the realization that Ace is really dead. All of these people are lost, and now that Whitebeard's dead, the world has been thrown into chaos. Now there's a complete power vacuum, this power struggle. Everything is thrown out of whack, chaos everywhere. Pirates are coming out of the shadows. Now that Whitebeard's dead, and this feared man, most of the ocean was like his territory, and now it's basically lawless because there's nobody there to guard it. Nobody is scared to go to these places anymore now that Whitebeard's dead, right? And Luffy is right at the center of all of this. So being able to see his despair, and, you know, we've never seen Luffy like this before. We saw a little bit of a snapshot of this when Luffy lost his crew on the Saga archipelago after Kuma made them disappear. Of course, he believed them to be dead at that point. But this just hit different. Yeah, just seeing the effects of the arc on Luffy after the fact was insane. One of the biggest parts of this arc, though, is that we see a huge backstory for Luffy and Ace, talking about how they exactly met each other, as well as the introduction of Sabo, who is like the third member of their little brotherhood. And this part was honestly pretty terrible, in my opinion. Sure, it was awesome to see Luffy's backstory. We didn't know much about him or where he came from beforehand. All of what we knew was when he met Shanks, and when he became a pirate, pretty much. We didn't know how he came to know Ace. Of course, before it was implied, right? Ace is his brother. But then we find out, oh, he's not actually his brother, so how does he know Ace? And this arc explains that. And like I said, it also introduces Sabo, who I know to become important later on. Yeah, all of this stuff, it was definitely very informative to further understand Luffy and Ace's relationship and their backstory. That's great. But after such an adrenaline rush that was Marineford, in the chaos, just switching right into such a slow going information kind of arc that's all backstory. I'm focused on, I want to know what's going to happen now. I want to know what's happening to Luffy. I don't want it to all slow down and then we have a whole backstory. Although, you know, it was nice to know this information, it dragged on way too much. And yeah, I think that it really just kind of sucked because it was so slow and it was caught in such a hype moment, you know. It just felt out of place. I don't know, maybe I'll look back on this and say that it wasn't that bad. It honestly wasn't that bad, but coming off of Marineford and then wanting to know what's next, with Luffy's training with Rayleigh and everything, being caught in the middle there, it was just boring and not super enjoyable. This was yet another arc, though, that I did enjoy pieces of, talking about the world elite and how terrible and cruel they can be, with burning an entire civilization of people to the ground just because they're believed to be inferior. All of these corrupt aristocrats and all that. Just the darker side of the One Piece world is what I do really enjoy. And we do get to see bits and pieces of that here, as well as more parts about the revolutionaries. We do get to see Dragon and Iva together in the past here, and them recruiting members to the revolution. And yeah, that was awesome. But that's not really what this arc focused on. And yeah, I guess it's those parts about it that save it from being kind of trash. Overall, I'd say it's probably a 6 out of 10. Not great, not even that good, just not bad after all of this backstory stuff, though, we do kick right into Luffy's training, sort of. Luffy sort of recovers from all of this crap, and he has a bit of a self-reflection and realizes that he's weak. They were trying to go into the New World. That was the whole goal before they kind of got sidetracked at Saga and everybody was split up. What they were going to do was go to Fishman Island and go into the New World. But everything here at Marineford that has happened opened up Luffy's eyes so much to where, you know, he realizes now that he is not ready whatsoever. He is weak. The New World, he's going to face even stronger opponents than what he has here in what we've seen so far. And if what he's faced at Marineford is the best that this area has to offer, well, then you best believe that the New World is going to be even worse and even more challenging. So if he couldn't handle what he's got now, then he's not going to handle the New World, and he can't expect his crew to do the same. He is the captain after all, and he has to be strong. So this kicks in, of course, into the training arc, which we don't get to see a lot of. It's skipped over with the time skip, but we start to understand Rayleigh training him with hockey, armament hockey, observation hockey, which is another thing. We see our boy Kobe. During Marineford, he does awaken observation hockey towards the end. Little detail that was just kind of escaped my mind, but I thought was interesting. And with this whole time skip thing, this is where we get the 3D 2Y, which basically means Luffy gets a tattoo on his arm and attracts a bunch of attention so that there's a picture taken of him that goes into the newspapers that spread across the world. Like, oh, Straw Hat Luffy has been spotted. He's still alive. And it's a secret code. Basically, 3D is X'd out on his arm. And it has 2Y. Because during Sabaody, the Straw Hats were planning to, when they split up from each other, they were planning to regroup there in 3 days. So with 3D, 3 days crossed out, we have 2Y, which means that they're not to return there in 3 days, but they'll return to Sabaody to meet each other in 2 years. So this gives everybody the opportunity to strengthen up, get some training in before they regroup and head out into the New World 2 years stronger. And so yeah, guys, that is my complete review of the One Piece Summit War Saga. The next episode, we will be going into Fishman Island and the New World, which I'm super excited for. Again, a little bit behind on recording and all that, videos and stuff and reviews, as I am currently reading Dressrosa. I'm on Punk Hazard at the moment. Actually, I'm about to finish Punk Hazard and get into the Dressrosa arc. So yeah, I am a little bit behind, but you guys will be seeing Fishman Island and Return to Sabaody here very soon. Yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy, and please don't kill me for some of my opinions I had. And as always, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Greatly appreciate it. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.